Hello and welcome everyone to the January 6th, 2021 Octant community meeting. Happy New Year, everyone. And thanks for taking the time to join us. We have a pretty good agenda today. Let me get it pulled up here somewhere. How do I do this to myself? I think I'd be prepared. I know it's happening. Screen share. There we go. All right. That should be visible to folks. Easy to read. Yes. Good. Okay. So we've got some couple things on here that we'll go through. I want to actually go out of order today because I want to start the bottom, which is things that are coming up. So there's breadcrumbs PR, which is currently merged. No. Yeah.
It was merged about 10 minutes ago.
Yep, it's merged. So it's in master now. So it'll be part of tonight's nightly build. I encourage folks to check that out. Just as a reminder, if you are not familiar with the nightly builds, we offer them right here. Browse nightly builds. It's gonna ask me to verify that it's me. This shouldn't happen. This is just happening because it's dumb. Whatever. Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's me. Let's see if it wants to share my passwords. No, it doesn't. Cool, good. Beauty of a password manager. You can see this anonymously, but if you are logged into a Google account, it might ask you to just like log into it. But nightly builds are here in this folder. They get published nightly. So the next one will be, you can see there's how many here? 10, something like that. Yeah, but yeah, you can see the last weeks of builds. You go in and then there'll be the files for your platform, Linux, Mac, Windows. I encourage people to use these and check things out. This is a great way for not like people to check out features early, but also plugin authors to give the latest versions a try while we continue to work on better like testing pipelines for plugins and API changes and stuff like that. So that's a thing that exists, and you can get to it right from our README. So I encourage people to check that out. But so breadcrumbs are there. There's another thing that's coming. This issue is allow data interfaces in Octant to be injected at runtime. This is mostly just around refactoring some of the ways that Octant currently starts up and making the surface area of the API, the internal API for Octant, easier to test in a functional way without having to spin up a full front end and do all of these things. It also lets us inject fake clients, so like API cluster clients, right into Octant at runtime, which again will allow us to do more interesting things in our testing pipeline, and also allow you to kind of separate the idea of here's the front end renderer, so what you see in Electron, and here's the back end server process. With those things being so tightly coupled together right now, even when our Electron application, we're like, we still ship the, I'm pretty sure like when you build Octant and then we package it into the Electron app, the front end assets are still packaged into a Rice box that's in the Octant binary, even though the Electron application could, in theory, just have the front end assets packaged with it as a build, which it does, right? And then that's accessed through the ASAR file, which is another binary archive of the front end assets. So it's like we package the front end assets twice right now in an Electron build, and obviously we don't want to do that. So this work here is kind of divorcing those the internal kind of server pieces, and then there's some other work that will further divorce the actual front end assets from the Octant binary itself. So then we will have this Electron renderer front end, which is using all of the front end assets and built into the ASAR, and we'll have this Octant binary backend, which produces the Octant stream that the front end will render. So That's where this work's going. It's interesting, fun internal work, but overall it'll be very useful to the project as we move towards this Electron build that we're doing. And then this is something, sorry, any questions there on either of those things that I went through very quickly?
I have a question.
Yes, Sam.
So if we are formally supporting Octant as a desktop application, and this allows Octant to be potentially, or I guess like potentially the runner package to be exportable and run programmatically. What amount of support are we doing to people who are going to be running Octant, not through Electron?
Yeah, so the from our team support wise, we will support any, like any, if somebody's running kind of just like the binary piece of Octant built from source and they run into bugs or issues, obviously we'll support those. But like when it comes to like, hey, I'm trying to deploy this thing, or I have this stack set up, or I'm doing this, or what, like that's stuff that we just don't have the time and ability to support at a large scale. So the officially supported way to run and view output from Octant will be the Electron application. We will obviously address bugs and things that come up when people are trying to run the Octant backend in a way that isn't through the officially supported Electron method. But as for configuration and deployment support, we won't be investing a lot of time there, and we won't be investing a lot of like, hey, can you make this piece pluggable, or can you make this easier to do? It's more just about we're doing this with the knowledge that we are creating a new API surface area, right? This completely separated stream generator and this completely separated uh, front end renderer. So we'll support that communication and that API um, to the level that we can, right, and make sure that quality is high and things are functioning there. Um, I think also if someone came along and they're like, "Hey, I really want to write like a TUI, like a TUI for the Octant stream," uh, or I really want to write a uh, custom renderer for the Octant stream that uses Vue.js or whatever, right? Or different. We would probably like help coach those people and help them figure some stuff out, but wouldn't actively support like upstream changes specifically to enable uh, new custom renderers, right? We would be like, you have to work within the API that we're defining for the level of rendering that we need. And that's open to, I mean, again, that's up to really folks in the community as well, right? Like if we get a really big, like people are like, hey, this is great. I really want, like someone's trying to write a custom renderer, and someone else is doing a custom render, and they both need the same thing. And then we're like, oh, actually, that would help kind of make each of those things easier to attain and be a benefit to the project as a whole. Like we're going to do those things, right? So uh, it kind of open an issue and you'll find out the level of support. I hate to, like, that's kind of the best answer, right? Like I think there are just some things that will gain more traction, and the more traction they have from the community, the more support we'll give them, right? That's kind of our model, right? Like if the community wants it and needs it, then we'll investigate it further and figure out the best way to do either either do that thing, or enable the end goal maybe in a different way, but still enable that end goal. That's kind of it. Does that answer that question, Sam? Cool. On to any other, sorry, before I move on, any other questions around that work or that approach? Pia is the product manager for Octant, so also you could just bug Pia if you really want to see something, and then she'll bug us, and then we'll do it.
Agreed.
All right. Changes to the review process. Yes. So this is something that Sam brought up in a stand-up meeting that we had, and he made some updates to the contributing doc that I think are important to check out. Come on, there's show me that. No, isn't there like a way to see the rendered one? I don't know. Maybe I just go right into. It's in master. I'm gonna just go there. Sorry. Specifically around reviews. So, also there was an update. I covered this in the last thing, but Sam was so kind to update our new flow for using GitHub projects instead of ZenHub. So that is now captured there, and the ZenHub language has been removed. So thank you for that, Sam. The review process. So currently the review process is not currently. Previously, the review process was ad hoc, and it was just kind of take them as you come and get to it when you can. And there was no there was no official language around the time and order and how we are going to approach these things. With that said, we've always done a fairly good job of trying to get them reviewed within a day or two. The OSPO standard set by VMware is 2 business days. And we currently meet that goal on average for all of our PRs. It takes an average. So like some go in fast, some go in slow, and it averages it. And it says, generally you do them in 2 business days. We're going to take that a little step further. And we're going to say that we want to avoid PRs being in any non pending state for more than a business day. So when a PR comes in, and this is all outlined here, but PR will come in, and by the end of a business day, there should be some action to either take or that has been taken on a PR. And it will move kind of through this outline that Sam put here of, waiting for a review, CI failure, pending changes from feedback, blocked, stale, or ready to merge. The motivation here is twofold. It's one, just to make sure that we stay active and engaged with like no one coming from outside the community feels like that their changes aren't being looked at in a timely manner, and that their voices aren't being heard when they contribute to Octant. But the other part is that we're going to be working to kind of change the view that we hold of master, and specifically making it the source of truth for releases and cutting new releases. The fault that we have right now on Octant is that our master branch isn't necessarily always ready to release. We kind of work towards getting it suitable for release, then we tag, we release, and then we slam junk on top of it, and then we tease out the bugs and we work through issues, and at any point it's not suitable for a release. We have to either like cherry pick things out or it's just not ready. And that's a failing on kind of my part of just like not encouraging that process throughout the team, and I don't follow that process. So this new process is going to encourage us to kind of get changes landed in an orderly manner, scope the PRs down to a size that makes them reviewable in a day, right? So doing more foundational work of saying like, hey, if I make all of this change for the end goal, that's a PR that would take days to review. We're going to scope this work down and break it into, okay, here's this work that, basically making pebbles from the stone, and doing these in pieces and reviewing them quickly and getting them landed. And so that way, when these changes land in master, should we need to cut a release, we can, right? There's no long outstanding changes that go through days of review that fatigue people, you miss bugs when reviews last for that long, you lose context when reviews go for that long. So it's just a better change for how we do our day-to-day engineering work and our review process, that the team has all agreed that it would improve just how things are happening. And so that's happening now. We're starting that now. We do have some PRs in flight that violate this rule, but they're grandfathered in, so we'll review them and get them merged in. But moving forward, all things will kind of follow this review process, and we will be so within the team and the broader community, if we expect things to say like, hey, could you please break this up into multiple changes, or this is too large, things like that, we'll be holding ourselves accountable and modeling that for the community at large. And I think I think that's it. Sam, Milan, Pia, Isha, anything to add?
Yeah, quick note. When drafting some of the language for this up, I specifically avoided the concept of code owners and designated reviewers for pieces of the code base explicitly, simply because there just aren't enough people to do that. And our team currently, we don't really make that, we don't really separate out that part of the code base yet. So technically, right, like Elon could be, specialization might be front end, but it doesn't exclude him from doing any other part of the work in the code base. So that ownership idea isn't necessarily meaningful yet. However, if we start getting more people contributing or I guess if we ever have a non-VMware person as a maintainer in Octant or sorts of that, we could start adopting that model, but we're just not there yet. So, it's left a little ambiguous on purpose.
Yeah, thanks for calling it out, Sam. I think something that I mentioned at the, I think it was at the December 23rd community meeting, was the printer next to me is very loud. Was the moving towards creating language that says exactly how does one become a a member, like an official member of the community and a contributor and a reviewer, right? Like, what is the steps? What does that look like for someone who isn't, essentially being paid by VMware to work on this thing, right? And having clear established roles and guidelines for what that means and how you kind of achieve that is something we also want to get written down and published this year, this month. That's something that I'm going to take onto myself to kind of deal with and do. So that'll tie in as well. I think I would love to see this start to include language about, like Sam was saying, about owners and even portions of our code. Like the code base has enough different things going on, like between just like the internal package, where someone could own even just parts of this, right? Like you could have someone who owns the resource viewer section and someone who owns like our object store and someone who owns the modules and there's a lot going on, like describers and printers, things like that. Plugin API, right? Like there's so many areas within the code that if people were very interested and hyper focused on those areas, that we could easily establish like patterns for ownership. Front end, even within the front end itself, you could have people who own very specific parts of the front end because there's some unique pieces in there, like the actual component renderer versus the services versus other things. So yeah, I think as we grow the community and get folks with a well-established pattern of how to get more involved, we can start to kind of define what ownership of those areas looks like.
And also as the code base grows, right? I mean, it's already pretty large code base, but as it grows, I think it makes sense to kind of use divide and conquer approach and do that. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
All right. So moving to there's this issue, or not issue, but there was this comment here about looking for feedback on building plugins. Was that one of us?
Yeah, that was me.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah, I can go through that. So we're going to be looking into how we can make the plugin creation process better, whether that's through better documentation, creating more examples. And what we're looking for is like specifics on what exactly could make that process better. It'd be really helpful to interview some of you that have created plugins or have attempted to create plugins and walk us through what were the pain points and what are your suggestions for mitigating some of the pain throughout the process. We know there's some stuff to be worked on. There are some open issues, but we're looking for like a higher level feedback as well, and just trying to understand what is your process and how we can make that better. So if you do have feedback, or you've attempted to create a plugin, or you've built a plugin, feel free to reach out to us. I'd love to set up some time, or maybe we can even just have a chat in Slack about what were some of your pain points and what you suggest.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Do we want to put a call out on the Slack channel as well? Just saying.
Yeah, I'll drop something in the Slack channel as well.
Great. And I think we can probably, I think we should be able to find some people who have some nice, good, strong opinions there. So who aren't just us. And then, so when I saw that there was looking for feedback on plugins, I wanted to capture some of the things that I just ran up against trying to make a very simple plugin. And it was completely frustrating. So I was like, well, we got the stepper component in master. Let me go pull that thing in and just try to use it. The API for it, especially, maybe not especially, but when using it within the JavaScript plugin, the API for the stepper component is just, there's this mix of it, and I comment on it here, but there's this mix of imperative and declarative between, the JavaScript plugins and how Octant's API works, and the dependency injection that happens and component rendering on the screen, that is a bit head spinning, right? You end up having to like use something like RxJS to like capture this data so that it can be updated from your action handler. Then it can be published back into your content handler so that then it can apply the right error message into the stepper component. And like, it's basically a lot of like low level, like pub sub subscription stuff that you have to do. And you have to like wrap all of these imperative APIs. And so then you can do this like declarative JavaScript approach. And to me, the solution is to make better helpers so that anywhere that we say like this component has an action, and you can do some type of action handler, we want some type of helper within our TypeScript library that just makes that kind of intuitive, right? Like you set up your action handler and it automatically produces a what are they called? Subject. It automatically produces a subject, and then that subject can then go and get used anywhere you want. And whenever that action is hit, the subject automatically gets the new action, right? And so like all of this right now is just, you have to manually go do it. And I think we can ease some of this by just putting those helpers into the TypeScript library. And then the second part where, and I didn't like, I reading this back now, this might be offensive to anyone who worked on the stepper component API, but it was not intentional. It's, what I mean by it's bad is that it's perfectly fine. It is bad in like, it's just difficult to use, especially within the JavaScript plugin experience. Like when you write a Go plugin with it, it's a little better because all the Go plugins use this imperative approach. But when you do this declarative approach and the stepper component, it just feels disconnected. Like I'm having to think about these interactions over this subject in multiple places to like deal with handling the actions for each step, handling the error responses for each step, and all this. So, and then the documentation, what I wanted to do was like, okay, let me go look at the documentation. And I think Sam brought this up before, of like the stepper component says it takes a form, like steps, and each step is a set of form stuff. But the form stuff, you go to the Clarity website and you look up like, oh, what are the form elements? Like, is it a text? Is it this? Is it that? We don't actually have like a good set of comprehensive documentation around it. We have examples in the website, the storybook, right? And those are, but they're not. That's also not comprehensive. That's just the example of the forms that we put in there and the requirements that we put in there. So the reason I brought this one up specifically is because the stepper component is right now the first real entry point into like interactive. I want to create a form, capture data, and submit it. That isn't just like big blank window, like apply YAML, or it's like actually guiding the user and helping them through things. So I really want to make sure that that API that we expose when we release this out into the wild, which it already is technically, but like I want to make sure that we're getting this piece of it all right, because it was really hard to use after 2 weeks away of not doing Octant stuff, and it made me sad.
Yeah, that's a bummer. You know, the API experience, the API access, it's pretty hard to do it right first time, and kind of similar to you. UI, it takes a little while to play with it, to realize what's going on. So I think this is a great time maybe to go back and do some refactoring and redesign those interfaces. Since, as far as I know, there are not that many people out there using it, if anybody. So I think we need to design new components with this in mind, and in the same time, when there's a need, go back and make some changes. And also the stepper components is not a simple trivial components. There's quite a lot going on there. So
I think you're muted,
You're
Wayne.
on mute.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you're right, Milan. And I have some code that I was messing with that I'll just share real quick that I think will also highlight what I'm talking about a little better. So like this is a JavaScript plugin. Let me get a little bigger just to ensure that people can see. But and this here, so like this set namespace, right, is just an action that comes in when the namespace changes in Octant. And sure, yeah, I can say like I handle this action, and then I have my action handler here. But you can see like to actually handle this action in a way that I can use it other places, I have to create this behavior subject, right, for the current namespace, and then handle the action, and then set it to the next off of the payload. And then now anywhere that I want to use this thing, right, as long as I'm calling it from I can get access to this current namespace, and it'll always be updated. And when you do it in this single instance, right, in this one case, that's fine. But now say you have something where you're handling like 10 actions from a form, like having to go and create, like I could create this behavior subject. It's basically like you copy and paste this thing, and then you change the action name, and it's very like it's very susceptible to mistakes, and like you now have to know about behavior subjects and all that. And I think building out some better abstractions within the TypeScript libraries, right, so that like the registration of the capabilities, right, like doing this somehow, whether it's in the constructor or somewhere, right, is it produces this thing that then instead of explicitly checking for the action name, maybe you're just looking at like you're within this, you're registering action, like maybe it returns a thing that takes the function that handles the action, right, or something. I don't know what the API looks like, but I think showing this code kind of helps express the point of like, you have to you have to expose these internals of RxJS and behavior subjects, and you have to know that, oh, I need to use a behavior subject because Octant was going to hit my plugin endpoint on a refresh loop, and if I don't use a behavior subject, it'll just overwrite the values every time, right? Like you have to have this tacit knowledge of like how Octant is hitting your plugin to write the plugin correctly. And I really want to get that. I want to distill that into a library. I don't want people to have to think like, oh, every time this thing gets called, I got to make sure and maybe it's just the documentation thing. Maybe we do expose that and we say, this is how you deal with persisted, like this is how you deal with values that you want to persist beyond the request, is you put them in the constructor and they're subjects and whatever. Anyway, I'm done with my rant on this. That's all.
Maybe the plugin API can have, and I'm not sure how this might look, but we could have the plugin API be responsible for some sort of data persistence. Like as long as Octant is running with that plugin, you can actually look up certain values, and like, arbitrary values, like almost like a kind of like a remote key value store that Octant itself is responsible for, which could be an interesting idea. I'm not sure if it's, if that's just a hacky workaround.
Yeah, no, I would love to see the way that people abuse that. Because I think putting like, hey, it's a generic key value store, knock yourself out, I think we would get some really interesting uses of that. And it's not an awful idea. I mean, it's been requested in issues in the past of some way to store data, right? Like session, what's it called, on the front end in the browser, local storage. People are like, oh, it'd be nice if plugins had access to local storage, right? So doing something like that, right? Like a file-based local storage, where your plugin. Here's the thing, though, we've kind of sidestepped that and have always said you can do that now. Your plugin can create a folder, it can write data there, it can read data from there. So we've kind of intentionally left that to the plugin author to say, here's a safe space, .config /Octant /plugins. Inside there, make a folder called, .my plugin data and write to it. So it's they can do it now. They could create a what's that, a SQLite database and write to it in the file system like that. Like, don't do that. Or do it. It might be cool. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I think you're right, Sam. It's something to think about. I think just having better patterns in there, though, even on the Go side, right? You run into this on the Go side as well. Like one of the first things people always talk about is, oh, how do I, every time it calls, it rewrites the stuff I have there. And you're like, yeah, well, it's, on a loop. So here's persisted outside of that function somewhere. So maybe it is just a documentation thing, or maybe we do provide a abstraction for it on the API itself. I'm leaning against that, though. I think I would rather just create some helpers and document it well, over create an actual like key value store.
Yeah, my feel too is that helpers would go a long way here, and as time goes on, we'll hopefully build more of those. So maybe in this case, maybe having something like add capability that will, register that and give you back everything you need. Do all the things in the background and give you back everything you need on your side. Maybe that's a good starting point, at least.
Another interesting thing might be to have a way for a plugin when we register the plugin to say, don't pull. Like I will push the data when it's ready. Don't pull me for data. That could be an interesting idea to toy with as well. Because then you could have interesting long running things, right? Like a plugin that is literally just watching for, like, think about a plugin that's watching for some type of bad thing to happen, right? It's just like sitting on a Prometheus endpoint, watching for something bad to happen. And then when that trend happens or it sees it, it fires an alert into Octant. That's just, like, that's its sole purpose, is to fire an alert. And then since you're running Octant on the desktop, you get a notification in your notification bar, right? Like, something like that would be hard to do right now, because it wouldn't be hard. Well, yeah, it would be hard to do right now. It would probably work because you could just run your own little Go routine. You just have an empty API for your content and then run a Go routine, and that could fire the alert. But where would you fire it to? You'd still have to get the API client to fire it to, right? And those come in through the request. So there's no good way to just fire up a plugin and say, give me the API client, and then sit there, do nothing until I need to. Anyway. Big ideas. I think that's it. Yeah, we are still focused on the quick wrap up for what we're doing. We're still focused on the Electron work. We want to get this out soon, but we will not. I think we've stated this multiple times. We will not sacrifice quality to get this release out. We want to make sure that this release is of a high quality and not breaking for people. And generally, the Electron experience is good. So we'll be hyper focused on that. And Slate, I think I said I would like to do that by the 16th or something like that. January somewhere. Next week is the 14th. Was like my it would be nice to, but again, we will not sacrifice the quality to do that. But I think we're close. So I think we're close. Anyone have anything else to add before we wrap? All right. As always, thank you, everyone, and we will talk to you all next week.
See you, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.